Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Massey, and I am here to welcome you to our author series. Today, I am very excited that we are hosting Toni Lipsey, who has a new book out called The Tunisian Crochet Handbook, A Beginner's Guide. And I have my copy of the book. I'm very excited to have this conversation. I just want to say on the record, when I went to her website to order my book, it was sold out. So I had to order mine from Amazon. So as soon as she comes to Detroit, I want to meet up with her so I can get a signed copy. But please go ahead, Toni, and tell us about your connection to Detroit and introduce yourself.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Tracy, and to everybody at the Detroit Public Library for this invitation. When I first got the email about it, I called my mom immediately. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm speaking with the library. So a little bit about myself. My name is Toni Lipsey. I am the crochet designer and educator behind TL Yarn Crafts. That is a one-woman business I've been running since 2013. And the focus is on crochet design and education. So I create a lot of tutorials, whether it be videos or written patterns and things for people to learn crochet. And I'm hosted there on YouTube, as well as my own blog, tlycblog.com. And then on the other side, I focus a lot on design. So I create patterns, much like you see behind me, lots of wearables, accessories, home goods that use a more modern palette and design style for crochet. My whole idea is to get people excited about crochet by making things that they actually want in their closet in their homes. As far as my connection to Detroit and to kind of Southeast Michigan, I was originally born in Texas to two parents who were in the military, and eventually we moved up to the Detroit area, Metro Detroit, Southfield area, when I was in 5th grade, and we kind of bebopped around for a while. So I spent my formative years all the way through high school in the Southfield and Detroit area. So I'm really excited. I moved down to Ohio about 12 years ago, but we are finally moving back this year. I'm ready to be a little bit more closer to home, closer to family. And I feel like this is the start of that process of getting that reconnection back home, for sure.
Wow. Well, it's great to know that you have a Detroit connection. And my next question is, how did you learn to crochet? Where is your background from crochet comes from?
So I love this question because this is where I get to talk about my mom. So I learned to crochet from my mother. Her name is Gwen Jones, and she was in the military, of course, when I was born. And just through the women in her family, all of her aunts, her mother, cousins, she learned just about every craft that you could get into. Anything that has to do with yarn, knit, crochet, machine knitting, she knows how to do. She made a lot of our clothes and things around our home with her sewing skills. So there was just kind of this random summer. I was 13 years old, home for the summertime. My brothers had gone to their respective places to celebrate the summer. And I think I was just kind of driving my mom crazy. My brothers and I were attached at the hip. We did everything together. So with them not available, I was looking for someone else to entertain me, essentially. And my mom was gracious enough to start a little granny square for me. She started just a couple of rounds and showed me kind of the basic technique and just told me to keep going. So over the course of that summer, I crocheted a very large and very hideous camouflage blanket using the granny square pattern. I don't know where that blanket is. Hopefully somebody has it and is taking good care of it. There are no photos, no photo evidence of me as a beginner, thankfully. But I think if anything, what I hold close to my heart from that experience is it was the first time that I realized that I had a talent for something other than school. I was always a strong student. I really enjoyed that. And I had great friends, wonderful time growing up, but I didn't really have any hobbies that involved creating something or making something, turning something into something else. So this was the first time I'd had that experience, and the pride that you have and the excitement and the possibilities that come to mind when you realize you have a talent like that, I feel like it was untapped for a really, really long time. So that's kind of how I got started. And eventually it kind of transitioned into all of this. It's now my full-time job.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I was going to ask is, how can we create the interest in our youth today? Because I remember when I was in middle school, we had to take a home ec class.
Yeah.
and I did okay in the cooking. I tried to make a pair of shorts that I never finished. And like the boys, some boys did home ec, some boys did woodworking. And as the schools got in financial trouble, the first thing they cut out were the art classes and gym and things like that, which were part of the humanities. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't have a way to express their feelings.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think it's such a shame that those things aren't as accessible. By the time I made it into school, we didn't have any kind of programs like that. It was just straight academics and sports, and that was it. So I think it's on us as the creatives of today, to pass along the torch, because otherwise things like knit, crochet, needlework, cross stitch, all of these handicrafts that we've learned from people who've come before us can very easily fall to the wayside. I'm grateful that right now knit and crochet and kind of that look of hand making is very popular and very trendy, especially with the onset of the pandemic and people being stuck at home, wanting to find a way to share time together. Handcrafts, the popularity definitely went up. And over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more people gravitate towards the kind of tutorials that I make to finally learn how to crochet. A lot of people, as I'm coming to understand, have inherited stashes from aunts and grandmas and people even further back. So you have a lot of these tools kind of floating around. And if you don't have them handy, you can get them very inexpensively from thrift stores or other like smaller craft markets. So I think we really have to take the responsibility to create small groups to teach these crafts, or kind of similarly to what I did, I am taking up space online to create those beginner tutorials and those really approachable types of projects to give people the confidence that I eventually created to, move further within these crafts. I think it's really cool that the youth are starting to warm to what has pretty consistently been considered a grandma craft. If we're being completely honest, crochet especially, I think is really stigmatized because it has that kind of handmade crafty look to it. But as you can see, like the cardigan behind me, I could easily see that in a store. It's about taking the expertise, taking the stitches and being really intentional about the products, the materials that we use. So the yarns and the tools that we use, that we can make something that is pleasing to the eye, but also super fun to make. So as far as engaging the youth, I feel like a lot of that is happening organically, but there are always opportunities for us as the people already educated in craft to go out there and create that space that they can feel confident and feel welcomed to learn something new.
Most definitely. You just mentioned something I wanted to discuss. You are the crochet expert on Knit and Crochet Now.
Yay.
And I was so excited to see that we finally got a person of color and you were doing crochet too. Can you kind of talk about how that opportunity came along and how's it going?
For sure. Yes. So Annie's is the company that puts on Knit and Crochet Now. And for anyone who's not familiar, it's a knit and crochet show that is hosted on PBS, picked up by different stations in different markets. So I'm pretty sure Detroit has Knit and Crochet Now, the current seasons. And I've been working on the show. I think I just completed my 3rd season last year. And just like you said, Tracy, I am one of the first people of color on Knit and Crochet Now. There was one woman several years ago, kind of in the earlier days of Knit and Crochet Now. And then there was a long stretch of time when it was all, kind of one demographic, I'll say that. When I started working with Annie's with some other projects. I actually wasn't familiar with Knit and Crochet Now as a show. So when that opportunity came about, I was just excited for the chance to crochet on television. I was just really glad to have been offered the opportunity when I finally showed up to the production studio and I saw that, my co-hosts were mostly white, the production team, mostly white, the videographers and the producers. It's very one note when you kind of start diving deeper into this industry. A lot of the companies behind this. So like an Annie's or a Lion Brand, these are very, very old moneyed groups that have just been hiring friends, family, or, you know, people who are also creative, but it's a lot easier for them to make connections with people that look like them. I have made it a point to stand out in this industry because when I first entered in 2010, 2011, when I kind of picked crochet back up again as an adult, I saw very few people that looked anything like me, whether it was teachers, designers, yarn sellers, people selling tools. I mean, it's quite hard to find us here. And it was something that was very frustrating to me, but you know, I've always been of the mindset of, well, if you want something to be different, you change it. So I could very easily have just become a casual crafter and engaging with, you know, this maker community in a passive way. But I decided that I had something different and something interesting and something special to share. And I wanted to potentially be the person who inspires somebody else who looks like me to dive deeper into this craft. Often when we walk into spaces where we're not represented, it can feel quite uncomfortable to try and rise up the ranks and build your skills and network and communicate with other people. So I figured if I could make a difference for one person who felt a little bit more confident learning crochet, or, you know, got something positive out of my videos, or felt like they belonged in this space because I was here already, I was like, then I did my part. I have done justice to this craft that in a lot of ways gave me a ton of opportunity, even though I don't see people that look like me in this industry. And that comes from a lot of pushing and hard work, because I got a lot of no's early in my career, whether that was applying for craft shows or, you know, being on panels or presenting at events. And I got a lot of different excuses as to why I wasn't invited to participate in things. So eventually I was like, you know, if you don't want to give me a seat at the table, I'll make my own table. And that's where TL Yarn Crafts really came from. And I was like, I'll start creating my own community of people who are having these conversations and who look like every color of the rainbow and every type of background, who speak different languages, who have different abilities. It kind of similar to my last point, we have to start creating the spaces that don't exist already. And I've done that as best as I can up to this point, and I will continue to strive to do that. But I hope everyone within the sound of my voice understands that we all have the power to accomplish that. You know, when I first got into crocheting, I wasn't doing anything special. I wasn't anybody in particular, but I think it was a matter of putting myself out there pretty consistently, just constantly showing up, being positive, being encouraging, and telling people like, yes, we can all do this together, and we all have the abilities and we have these special talents. I think every single person in the world has something positive to contribute to their preferred areas, and anybody who wants to be this positive contributing force in the maker community and knit and crochet, any other handicraft, I think it's, I don't know, in a way, I feel like it's kind of doing yourself a disservice if you don't find the way to get that word and get that magic out. So even though I was a bit put off by how, I don't know, one note the entire industry was, I was enamored with crochet. I love this craft and I knew I was going to do it anyway. So I really kind of put my head down and focus on how can I make a difference for other people that want to crochet, and especially people that look like me. And it's been a really amazing journey, because I do get those emails and those messages from people I now call my aunties, all the way down to my cousins, that are like, you know, I've just never expected to see somebody have a level of success or a level of you know, positive impact in this industry who look like me. I'm just so grateful that you exist. And my response is always, I'm grateful that you exist and I'm glad that you're here. So what's your magic? What are you bringing to the table? You know, I think we all have a bit of responsibility to make sure these crafts stay around, and that we as people of color stay relevant in these industries. It's really up to us. We can't wait for anyone to do it for us.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I crochet myself, and whenever I visit different cities, or even here in southeastern Michigan, I've noticed just a little slight when you walk in and you say you crochet versus knitting. And I know you mentioned that your mom did both. Have you felt a little slight in knitting versus crocheting? And It's almost like we're kind of almost like the step kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
Oh, yeah.
looking at that beautiful garment that you made behind you, which looks like it could be on any store shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned craft fairs. Maybe if you could talk about a little bit of that disparity, because years ago I was having my car service out in suburbia. So of course I looked to see if there was any yarn shops, and I'm walking down this 2-lane road to get to the yarn shop, and I knock on the door and they were closed for a private setting. But I had my bag with me and I was all excited, and I was kind of turned away because I had the Lion brand, the big green bag that they used to sell at the big box stores.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think everybody understands the investment in the craft too. If you're purchasing from a local yarn store, can you speak a little bit about that? Because I know you also do yarn reviews too.
I do, yeah. You brought up so many amazing points. I mean, we could make a laundry list of the disparities within this industry, whether it be, people discriminating against crocheters, and for whatever reason, I think crochet is fabulous. I don't see what people's problems are. And then there's also, this big disparity between, purchasing yarn from one place versus another. Are you buying like big box and large brand yarns, or are you going hand-dyed small local yarn store route? And people have a lot of feelings about that and typically fall on one side or the other. So to speak to your first point, yes, I have 100% more than once experienced what feels like full-on discrimination because I am a crocheter walking into a store, particularly smaller local yarn stores run by Caucasian people, especially. I always feel, I feel like you can't help but have your guard up a little bit when you walk into a local store and you don't see anybody that looks like you. There's just, our history is colored by what has happened to people who look like us as we've continued to move around this world. So when I walk into a local yarn store in a city I'm not super familiar with, I'm hoping upon hope that I'm gonna find somebody who will welcome me and help me, but I don't expect it. For sure. And especially when I mentioned that I'm a crocheter and I look around and I see that there's not a lot of yarns that cater to crochet or tools available in that store. You might not see more than one brand of crochet hooks. It really speaks to their values and how much they care about certain types of crafters. And I'm sure we could find some excuse of why they do that. There's a lot more people that knit. There's a lot more knit designers. There's a lot more yarn created for knitters. But until we step up as crocheters and say, well, we deserve some space here. We understand that crochet uses more yarn, so we just have more money and we spend more. Like every single, I think, excuse that they try to make of like, why not crochet? I'm like, but what about this over here? Like, thinking about Tunisian crochet, for example, it's this craft that kind of falls at the intersection of knitting crochet. It shares similar techniques. It can create similar fabrics. So it is still crochet at its core. But I think it's kind of knocking on the door of knitting and saying, hey, we're here too. And it's going to get pretty hard for you to keep us out of these spaces. At least that's what I've been going for. I'm a little bit of a rebel. I don't really like hearing the word no. I don't really like being told that I can't be in a particular place. So I'm going to enter that space. I'm going to disrupt it a little bit, and I'm going to explain why my viewpoint is just as important and deserves just as much weight as anybody else in the room. So it's very rare that I'll go into a yarn store and kind of take it personally if I'm getting ignored or, kind of getting snuffed or pointed in the direction of only the cotton or only the silk because I think that's all that we use. It's ridiculous. Times have changed pretty significantly. Very few of us are making tablecloths out of lace cotton anymore. So I think it's time for this industry to change its thinking a bit and understand the value of crocheters. We're introducing a lot of people to this craft. We're bringing people to local yarn stores and to hand-dyed makers, and we're even introducing them to the larger companies like Lion Brand or Webs or We Crochet. So we're just as relevant, and there's really nothing a knitter can say to make me not feel that way. So I just keep pushing forward. I'm obsessed with crochet. If that's not obvious already, I think it's the more superior craft in every way, personally. So that really kind of dictates how I represent my skill and my talent in these spaces. So you also spoke to kind of this disparity in this, I don't know, sometimes folks will look at, like you said, you walked in with your Lion brand bag, or like somebody who shops at a Joann or Michael's, and almost insinuate that they're not a serious crafter or they're not as talented because they're using like lower priced products or mass produced products. I think that's completely ridiculous and terribly short-sighted for a company or for an individual. I've had the great opportunity to work with everyone from Lion Brand to Madeline Tosh. And I mean, talk about a disparity between price points. So you can lend your talent to any material. A true artist is going to be able to take any materials, any medium, and turn it into true art. So it's a matter of finding the right talent. And also, I think the local yarn store owner who turned you away and possibly, snubbed their nose at your bag was incredibly short-sighted, because again, crocheters understand that this craft is expensive. Whether we're buying from Joann or we're buying from a local yarn store, we're there to spend money because we want to, feed our desire to build our stashes or to create certain types of projects. There are things that I was making back when I had Joann money, but I wanted to go to a local yarn store because I was like, I want to make something kind of fancy, whether it be for myself or for a gift. So I was going there for a very particular reason with the expectation to spend money. But there are a couple stores I've gone in and I felt like I didn't get the welcome that just any other customer would deserve. And I have certainly walked out. Me and my Visa have gone to another store. So we can definitely speak with our dollars. We can speak with our money, and we can go to the places that we're celebrated as opposed to having to beg to shop at somebody's store. I mean, I can't imagine having to ask someone, can I spend money here? Like, give me a break. What kind of business person are you? So, I mean, certainly as a professional within this industry, like a lot of those differences are much more acute to me because, like you said, I review yarn and I review yarn at every price point. So I've worked with a lot of different companies and reps. And I'm very well aware of which ones are a little bit more generous, which ones are a little bit more skeptical, but I still try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt because I find that my perspective when sharing about their products really puts all these yarns on equal footing. There have been $3 a ball yarns that I've loved and $30 yarns that I've absolutely hated. So, I mean, anybody could get it, really. Like, I'm going to be super honest about the yarn that's in front of me as opposed to how I feel about that company necessarily. But yeah, I mean, those discrepancies are certainly out there. And I don't know, I feel like you stumble upon them pretty quickly as you get deeper into the craft. For sure.
That is so true. The chat is just going crazy over here. But I did write down a couple of questions that popped up. One was, are you working on another book? And could you speak a little bit about Tunisian crochet? Because Tunisian does have a knitted look and you use a specific needle.
Yes.
I took a class at a local yarn shop that used to be here in the city of Detroit, which closed. And now we have another local yarn shop within the actual confines of the city of Detroit, which I'm very excited. And I think there's a place, for both, like you were saying. But if you could talk a little bit about this book and when your next book is coming out. And also someone said your book is sold out. I think it's still available on Amazon. It's just sold out on your website.
So what I did, just so now that we're into it, and I know everybody here is super serious, I put a very small update of books on my website. So between now and whenever I wake up tomorrow morning, probably about 8 or 9 o'clock, there are 50 signed copies available on my website, tlyarncrafts.com, specifically for this event. So anybody who was interested in a signed copy, you're more than welcome to head over to tlyarncrafts.com. Just click on the link that says Tunisian Crochet Handbook, and you can get a signed copy there. So that was just a little special thing I did just for us. So y'all can check that out. I will keep you out of suspense. I do not have plans right this second for a second book. because I'm still promoting this one and I'm still really excited about it, but I have some ideas. Some ideas are brewing. My publisher is very motivated to get a second book started. But with some personal things going on and the big move happening this year, it's probably not something I'll seriously consider until next year. So we'll see. But let's talk a little bit about this girl right here. So excited every time I hold this book, because it's been months that it was sold out and it's just kind of coming back. So like every time I hold it, I just get really excited. So this is the Tunisian Crochet Handbook, my very first book that released in December of 2021. It is an entire volume to teach you from beginning to end how to Tunisian crochet. So let me give you some background on Tunisian crochet as a craft. It is an offshoot of traditional crochet, but as you can see from these tools, it uses a long tool similar to a knitting needle, and then it's got a crochet hook on the end. And the reason for that is because you create a completely different type of fabric than you would for traditional crochet or knitting. So it does need its own specialized tools. So with this tool and just regular yarn, you can create fabrics that look just like this. I also have a few samples from the book, but essentially in the book, it opens with all of the education that you need. It talks about different types of Tunisian crochet tools, whether it's a regular crochet hook, a long crochet hook, or an interchangeable crochet hook. It talks about different stitches that you'll want to learn, different language that you'll need to learn in Tunisian crochet, including the forward pass, return pass, the last stitch. It's really building that toolkit of knowledge. So even beyond this book, I want you to have a good grasp of this technique, because there are a lot of amazing designers that are coming out with awesome patterns. And then there's also, things that you might see that you want to create yourself. So that's the first 60 pages, is all education, lots of photo tutorials, and it really just kind of breaks it down for you. The back of the book is really my pride and joy. I created 20 exclusive patterns for this book, everything from hats to headbands to scarves to cardigans, home goods, blankets, pillows, all kinds of things. And it was a labor of love coming up with this very diverse collection of patterns where every single one of them is still beginner friendly. So this cardigan is no more difficult than the pot holders in the book, for example, or I have this big, gorgeous, colorful blanket, and it's no more challenging than the basic pillow that's in the book. So I definitely want people to feel confident tackling whatever kind of project is most interesting to them. And I write my patterns in a way that even if you only make this one pattern, you're going to have the knowledge you need to continue with this craft. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and show you a few samples. This first piece that you're looking right here is called the Pemba Cardi. It's just that classic oversized, really bulky cardigan that's like super, super popular right now. I definitely had to put something like that in the book. And I really like this piece because it's super easy to customize. If you're not kind of an oversized cardigan type person, you can easily narrow the panels and make this be something a little bit more fitted. And it uses bulky weight yarn, so it's definitely meant for those fall and winter months. But you could switch this out for like a worsted weight cotton and try this out in like the spring or summer. So that's a really fun piece. Another one I have here, and this is the one I made specifically so I can hear people say, oh my gosh, that's crochet, because yes, it is. So this is a little beanie that I created. It's called the Elm Slouch. It has a slight amount of slouch, and as you can see from this texture, it looks a lot like knitting, but this is a stitch that you can accomplish with Tunisian crochet. It uses 2 different colors and starts with this ribbing here at the bottom. And as you go up, you can see there's some lines of shaping just to give it a better fit. I really like this one, and I think a lot of people, after they got the book, gravitated toward this project. It works up super fast. It looks great in any yarn, and it's definitely the kind of project that you feel super accomplished as soon as you're done, because it just, it looks flawless, regardless, like whomever has made it. It always looks really, really good. So that's the Elm Slouch. That's in the book as well. So if people want something a little bit more graphic, I have this piece here. This is called the Alpha Wall Hanging. So essentially, you're going to use the Tunisian crochet technique to create this canvas back here. And then this is actually cross stitch, because you can see that this simple stitch creates these little boxes, kind of similar to a cross stitch grid. So I had this alphabet custom made for the book, and the alphabet is all the letters A through Z and the numbers 0 through 9. And so you make this canvas, you cross stitch whatever letter or number you want, and then it needed a little bit of flair. So we did some pom-poms and some fringe to make it super cute. The idea there is to, maybe put that in a kid's room or update the colors and skip the fringe, and you can maybe have that be like a pennant in your entryway or something like that. A couple more. So this one is the Kensington Tote Bag. So again, I'm using that Tunisian knit stitch. And the reason I did that here is because it creates a pretty thick fabric, but I was planning to use this bag to go to the library. I wanted something that was nice and thick and strong and could hold on to all the books that I check out when I go to the library. So this one's really nice too, because it's got a super easy construction. You'll kind of start at the bottom, work your way up. And this is all worked in one piece. So the handle, you just add right on. And then you will just pick up stitches along the bottom here and work the other side. So all you have is a seam here and a seam here on both sides. So this one's worked with super bulky weight yarn, works up really, really quickly, and could easily be a product that you sell at a craft show booth or give for like holiday gifts because it works up so fast. And then the last piece that I'll show, because I know typically when somebody's first starting out with crochet, they just want something very, very simple to make. So I made these pot holders, and I really, really love them because they kind of solve the problems that I think some people have with like crochet pot holders, for example, particularly that they're not usable because the yarn is not thick enough to keep your hand from burning when you grab a pot, right? So what I did was I made these double thick. So you actually create 2 squares. On the front square, you're going to cross stitch just a little geometric design. It's like a 7x7 grid, and you could also create your own design if you wanted. And then when you create the back, you also create this hanging loop. It's just worked right into the pattern. And then you're going to back stitch, which is an embroidery technique, those 2 squares together rather. So you've got this nice thick pot holder, could easily use it as a trivet as well. This is the original sample from the book, by the way, that I use in my kitchen constantly. And it has stayed very, very clean and very crisp. So I can say from experience that this is absolutely a usable piece. So these are both in the book. Here's like a pink version. And again, I really lean into kind of the modern style of design. So geometric patterns, really bold, striking colors and big pools of color, that really speaks to me. So you'll see that in a lot of the patterns in the book. But yeah, it's this really fun collection and real celebration of crochet. I don't want anybody to ever look at crochet like, oh, well, all I do is crochet. I look at it like, I'm really good at crochet and I'm going to make all the things, like regardless of who says what type of project is better for knit and crochet. In my mind, you can make anything in crochet and it's going to be fantastic. So yeah, the Tunisian Crochet Handbook is really just a celebration of my joy and my excitement with Tunisian crochet, and I hope people will pick it up and check it out.
I would like to say that I found your teaching technique, your videos on the blog, on the show, very inspiring, very professional. Your presentation is excellent. Where do you get that design inspiration? Because I've made a couple of your patterns, and I did one that was on the show, and it's like, where does that inspiration come from? And how hard is it to get it down on paper?
Wonderful question, because yeah, the getting it from here down on paper can be a challenge. I would say that my inspiration kind of comes from a combination of the world around me and then also any holes that I see. So like, for example, I'll go to like a Target or an H&M or these places that for the most part, I don't necessarily buy clothes from because I'm not in love with this whole fast fashion thing that's happening. So I'll look at these pieces that, are probably very unethically made, cheaper, inferior materials, insanely overpriced. I don't know what's going on lately, but everything is so expensive. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to spend that much, I'd rather spend it on a yarn I really like and spend that time making it myself. And essentially, maybe I'm tooting my own horn, but make a better version of what's available in the store anyway. And then encourage my friends and my family and all my customers to make it themselves as well. Because I think occasionally we run into a piece that we really like and we're like, but if they just did this one thing, if the neckline was more relaxed, or if the sleeves were this particular shape. Well, the nice thing is when you make your own clothes, you can make them look like whatever you want. For example, with this cardigan here, I did like a balloon sleeve because I didn't want a lot of shaping, but you could easily taper down those sleeves for a more fitted look. And I love that idea of taking something that you see in a store that's not quite right, whether it's the price, the materials, the fit, and make it into whatever it is that you want it to be. So that's one place for sure that I draw my inspiration. Another place is trying to find the holes in, you know, whether it be my own wardrobe or in my own home decor, or maybe there's a particular person I want to make a gift for, and I can't find the exact type of project where a pattern exists already. That's where I draw a lot of inspiration too, because I kind of look at this combination of things I want for this perfect piece. And I'm like, well, I can't find it looking exactly like this, so I'm going to make it myself. And that was actually the catalyst for my very first design. When I was working the craft show circuit back in 2015, 2016, I was looking for a very particular type of hat to sell in my booth. I was very familiar with where you could find crochet patterns. And at the time, I wasn't designing a lot of things for my booth. I was making them from patterns that I purchased. But I had a very specific list of criteria I wanted in this hat to sell, and I couldn't find that anywhere. Well, even with my very limited knowledge of crochet, of stitches and shaping and working with color, I was able to create a hat that looked like the hat that was in my head. So finding this hole in what it was that I wanted and filling it with my own design was kind of my first foray into designing. So that hat is actually my Mega Palm beanie, first pattern I ever came out with. It's still available and still one of my best sellers to this day, because it was very intentionally designed, and it's got this universal timeless appeal to it. And that's what I try to capture with all of my designs. I don't ever want something to feel like, oh, that's something I would have worn in 2002, but I'd never wear that again. You know, I want you to have those kinds of pieces that you keep in your closet. You can mix and match together, or pieces that maybe you make for your home and you've got one in wool and one in cotton to switch them out for the seasons. So I'm really intentional about how I want people to use the products that they make for my designs. And that's what influences what I make, essentially. Yeah.
Excellent. I just wanted to let you know that we have a full class. We have people all the way from Canada and someone from overseas or some part of Calgary, Canada, and somewhere else. So that's very inspiring. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit specifically on Crochet Guild of America and the Yarn Craft Council. I did solicit some questions from other people in the crochet industry, and I am a member of the Crochet Guild of America, and I know they have an upcoming conference. And when I looked and I clicked on the list, and I didn't see too much diversity. So I know you kind of spoke on it a little bit, but have you ever ventured into those forays, and would you encourage people to get the different types of certifications? Do you feel those are needed, or everyone could just hang up their own shingle and go forth?
Great question. So, you know, as a professional in this industry, I've certainly been able to go to different events, kind of like these larger yarn related events, whether it be Vogue Knit Live or I haven't been to any Crochet Guild events. The showing is just not very strong here in Columbus, but I know it's a lot more popular and more populated in other places. But you go to these larger conventions that are supposed to be this opportunity for, you know, the lay person, you know, just the everyday crafter, to get this closer access to the companies and the people and the teachers that they're really, really excited about. Unfortunately, you walk into these events and I mean, the diversity is often not there. I will say one saving grace is I went to Stitches. I had to go all the way to Sacramento, California, and I feel like there was a nicer mix. But oftentimes when I go to places like, you know, New York or even Chicago, these events similar to the companies that participate, I mean, these are very old institutions. They are, you know, run by the same people they've been run by for 20 or 30 years. Their boards and their staff have never been particularly diverse. And I feel like it's actually a pretty new trend for companies to even care about the diversity within their organizations, to want to be more representative of their customers in the communities that they participate in. A lot of times when you engage on social media, a lot of the larger names are white artists, white designers, white dyers, white tool makers, white teachers, because that's always been what's reflected in this industry. So it's the people that they attract. And since we don't feel represented, it's a lot higher of a hurdle to get over, to feel like I can have a voice here, I can speak here, and I can have some influence here. I think it was my own, I don't know, beginner's naivete that I even felt like I could have a voice in this place. I don't know. I've always been very spoiled, and I'm not very good at listening to the word no. I think that's really been the catalyst to my success. Like, I decided I wanted to do well here, and I was going to do whatever it took. But that's not the case for everybody. Not everybody's got that extroversion, and not everybody has the perseverance to constantly be told no, or pretty regularly have low stats on their content and still push through anyway. So it's quite frustrating to go to those conventions and not see people that looks like you. But I think if you want to exist in those spaces, because they do have a lot of great information to offer. Like, as a designer, I use the resources from Craft Yarn Council constantly. And I know that they have these different educational programs for you to learn how to be a stronger crocheter, or learn how to be a crochet teacher. I would say that they're valuable mostly because a lot of those resources don't exist elsewhere. There's not a lot of organizations giving you advanced certifications in how to be a crochet teacher, or how to, just crochet better in general. So I definitely think they're useful. They serve a purpose. My hope is that more folks like me or you will continue going to these events, continue sharing our craft with our loved ones and our friends and family, people within our community. And, just eventually those numbers will start to tick up. I can't think of any way we can have those go up more significantly other than you'd have to change those organizations and those companies from the top. Like, getting more people of color, more women in decision-making roles. And then you're going to see more decisions being made when they create these conventions to say, we've got 30 white teachers. What else? What else are we going to do to make sure our entire community, our entire customer base feels confident and feels encouraged and feels invited to come to these events? I'm grateful to have been on a board for a craft show that I used to participate in a lot. And I found, as soon as I got that seat at the table, that I had to be the one to speak up and say, let's look at the mix of people that we're approving for seats at these booths. Do we have more? What's our mix between men and women? What's our mix between people of color and not people of color? What's our mix between able-bodied people and people with disabilities, or different abilities? Like, how are we being well-rounded in who we're inviting to the table? And how does that impact how people feel about patronizing our events? I recognized that over the few years that I was on that board, and we all got a lot smarter about how we, worked out the mix of people that came to our events, that more people wanted to promote us, more people came to our events, we had more opportunities of different venues that we could go to. When you invite more people to the table, have these different perspectives, create these connections, you have no idea what parts of the world will open up to you. And I think it's short-sighted of these companies to kind of just continue on with the status quo, because it's always worked in the past. But now you have people who are diving deeper into the values of these companies and the diversity from every single level, and having something to say about it, and really speaking with their dollars and speaking with their presence. The Craft Yarn Council used to be a massive presence in the maker community, and you don't hear about them quite as much because they have not modernized as the times have continued to change. Like, there are people of different ages, different skin colors, different abilities, different opportunities, socioeconomic, coming into this industry. And if your company doesn't reflect that, you're going to have a hard time engaging that wider group of people. So I think these larger organizations, Craft Yarn Council, Stitches, Vogue Knit Live, they'll only get better as they get more intentional about inviting people that represent their entire base. But it's up to them. it's certainly up to them. I feel like I like to go to those events because I like to know what's going on. I'm very nosy in that way. But if they're trying to get just, the knitter group that's never gone to an event together, they're going to have to put in a little bit more effort to make everybody feel welcome, in my opinion.
Well, thank you for speaking on that. I had another quick question. Do you ever use Ravelry? Or can you recommend other different types of sites that help you keep track of what you make? Because a friend of mine who is a non-crocheter, actually Miss Peel, who's on the author council, was the one who turned me on to Ravelry.
Yeah.
And that helped me kind of keep track of my projects, what I made, when I made, and things like that. And then also you mentioned that you used to do craft shows. Can you talk about the value of crochet? Because a lot of people think, oh, Tracy's making a blanket, you can make me a blanket for free, or something like that. So can you kind of speak on that? Because I don't think people truly understand when you look at the amount of time and resources that go into making different things.
Yeah.
I shop everywhere for yarn. I order online, I do the big box stores, I do the local yarn shops. And I think my mother was with me at a local yarn shop once when she started looking at the prices of yarn. And I was like, no, you can't afford me. But if you can kind of speak on that, because a lot of times I think people tend to disrespect handmade crafts.
Yeah.
And their level of, what the value is.
100%.
And if you can kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'll keep it brief. I know we're coming up on time. So your first question, just remind me again, I know we're going to talk a little bit about craft.
I was just asking about Ravelry, or if you can recommend other different types of websites that might help you for keeping track of your projects.
Sure. So Ravelry, I think in the world of knit and crochet is kind of the #1 resource when it comes to, just kind of this community type place that knitters and crocheters can come. And it's got a lot of features. So, you can purchase patterns there, you can track your stash there, you can track your progress on projects there, you can engage with different, threads and communities. So Ravelry has a lot going for it. I know they've had their share of scandal in the past few years, but they're still trucking, and I'm grateful because they're an amazing resource. So I would definitely say, most of us are on Ravelry and use, at least one, if not more, of their features. There are other sites popping up. A lot of them are more specialized. So for example, Lovecrafts has an amazing marketplace for purchasing patterns. What's nice about them is they're more international. So you get to access patterns written by Danish designers or Australian designers or African designers. Ravelry is very kind of US based. There's international representation on Ravelry, but I feel like Lovecrafts does a way better job of engaging designers internationally. There's also a website called Ribbler, Ribbler. They're relatively new. And what's nice about them is since they're so new and so kind of scrappy, they're really kind of getting their legs under themselves. They engage a lot of newer designers and newer crocheters. So when you go to Ribbler's site, you can really get a feel for kind of this younger, fresher perspective on these handcrafts. I will definitely say that their collection of patterns doesn't appeal to a mass market. It's definitely got a younger kind of flair to it. But I think as they continue to grow and engage with different designers and add more features, it could be a really great place to find kind of new styles that you're interested in. But Ravelry, I think, will for a very long time be kind of that #1 spot. They're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. And that's mostly because they've just been around a lot longer. So let's talk a little bit about the value of crochet and kind of what that has to do with craft shows. So it's an interesting dynamic as a solo business owner, as the main crafter in my business, of course, to create things and then put a price tag on them. Because in my head, everything I create is priceless, but I had bills to pay. So I needed to, put those price tags on there. And there are a series of formulas that people have tried to come up with over the years to help you decide how much a product is going to be. but it's a combination of head and heart creating those price tags. So yes, you can incorporate, you know, how much time you put into it, how much you spent on the yarn, how much it costs to get into the craft show, or how much you pay for gas. But you also have to consider, you know, your skill level, how quickly you crochet, how difficult your patterns are. So it's definitely a combination of all of those things. I would say that by the end of my craft show career, I was definitely on the higher end price wise. So I was selling a hat for $45 to $50. I was selling a scarf for somewhere between $60 and $80. And the difference, I think, is your salespersonship. Can you sell a hat for $45 or $50 in person? Can you convince somebody that this hat that took you 45 minutes to make is worth $60 because it's amazing and beautiful and you use quality materials and you have this much experience? Like, what's your sales pitch? So that helps a lot. Going to the right shows makes a big difference. So I am not going to sell a $60 hat in a church basement, but I might sell it at, you know, the trendy micro pub that just opened up, because you're going to get a different type of audience. You have to understand where the people are that are going to buy a $60 hat. And I was finally able to narrow that down. I feel like I feel like it ends up being kind of the same types of folks when you go to those more expensive craft shows in, you know, nicer neighborhoods. Those folks are coming in expecting to spend some money. They might not necessarily care about the value. They see something they like and they buy it. So it takes a bit of trial and error to find that audience, but they're definitely out there and they're ready to buy. I think also you have to decide when the cost of running a craft show booth is just not worth it anymore. So I did craft shows for 4 years straight. My first year was terrible. Second year was better. And my last 2 years were fantastic. But after a while, it kind of takes a toll on you, like lugging these big Rubbermaid totes up and down stairs and, you know, having to drive, you know, maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to a venue. After a while, you have to look at different ways to create income within your business, because you'll start to burn yourself out. I don't understand folks that have been doing craft shows for 20 years. It's just so much on you physically. And there are lots and lots of other ways to make money in the maker business. If you're just obsessed with craft shows and that's what you want to do with your time, more power to you. But there's certainly ways to work smarter and not harder over time.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you, I have truly enjoyed this. I could personally sit here and talk with you for hours on end. I'm trying to scroll through the chat to see if I have any other direct questions. See. You've been invited to go everywhere, just so that you know.
So I've heard, yeah, I'm kind of on this very impromptu book tour right now. I've went to a few different places here in Ohio, hoping to do some events near the Detroit area. You know, travel is still a bit tricky for myself and for other folks. So I'm definitely trying to make my way around. I've gotten a lot of requests for Texas and California and Maryland, surprisingly. Yeah, I just need the plane ticket and I'll pack my bags.
Right. All of those are a little bit kind of far to drive. Someone just said, you're welcome to come to New England, California. They're waiting for you to come to the sunshine. Yeah. And of course, you said you were born in Texas, so
yeah,
that might be a draw.
We'll see.
Oh, they're even welcoming you to Australia.
I know. So you know what's so surprising is, as I've continued to like promote my book and share more about crochet, I'm finding out that Australia and Brazil have amazingly like booming industries for crochet and handcrafts, which is very new to me. Also, while I have a second, I need to acknowledge that my mom is here. Mom, I see you.
Most definitely say hi to Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Without her, there would be no you.
Absolutely. There would be no me in a lot of ways. I wouldn't be here and TL Yarn Crafts wouldn't be here.
I see your mother's work in a couple of groups I'm in, and it looks like she's an amazing designer in her own right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she really is. My mom does not follow patterns. I think her style of artistry is like, I need to just be able to go with my own flow. She'll often look at something, she'll get that inspiration, but she'll make it for herself. Like, we've been out at events together, she'll buy a sweater quantity of yarn and just start. No pattern, no measurements, but she's made enough sweaters for herself that she knows her body, she knows her measurements. And I think that is a skill that is invaluable. If you can always make your own clothes, you can make your clothes, you can make other people's clothes, and you can find that inspiration in any product that you're given. So she'll see a bright, sparkly yarn, and I'll look at it like, what are you even going to do with that? And then I'll see her the next week and she's made a dress, so she's the talent is, it just flows out of her, and she's blessed me with a bit of it, which I'm grateful for. We definitely have different styles, different outlooks, even different design styles. But honestly, spending time with my mom around this craft has been probably the biggest joy of doing all of this. She often comes with me to different events and, kind of gives me the confidence sometimes, because sure, I'm an extrovert and I love to be around people and love to do speaking things. But one of my pitfalls is I still have trouble promoting myself and like selling myself when I'm out publicly. And my mom is my biggest cheerleader and she'll jump right in. So that's definitely helpful. That's my girl. That's my girl.
Well, I think you just need to open your mouth and say hello and just go. But we have truly enjoyed hosting you today. When you write that next book, please come back. You always have a voice here at Detroit Public Library. And I would like to tell our Detroit Public Library customers that we have ordered copies of your book for the library collection.
Really?
Due to the pandemic, the supply chain is kind of slow, but as soon as I heard about it, I ordered it. So when they get here, if people sometimes might not have that extra few dollars to own their own copy, or they just want to come in and view it, we do have them available.
Oh,
and
cool.
Toni just put in the chat again the link to where you can pick up your signed copy of the Tunisian Crochet Handbook. And if everybody could give a hand clap and thank her for coming to spend time with us today. I hope you have enjoyed this. I've enjoyed hosting it. I just wish I could crochet all day, but unfortunately, I still need a real job to pay the bills.
Fair enough. It definitely, we're not going to make our millions, but I only quit my job back in 2017. Grateful to be coming up on 5 years, but it was definitely, it was a side hustle for a long time. So I definitely understand. Yeah.
Well, I say crochet is my therapy. So I usually always keep a bag in the car, and I just try to not to do it where I'm considered being disrespectful to other people. But I find I started crocheting again when I was in grad school. And I find I'm a more active listener when I'm crocheting because, as long as I got a pattern where I don't have to count, then I'm fine.
So, it gives you a focus, I think, especially in a setting like a classroom. And there have been stories that have come out of everyone from adults down to children knitting or crocheting in class and really helping with their focus. There's so much to learn around this craft. And that's why I'm excited that younger folks are getting into it. And, I hope that we can all kind of hold the baton and get more folks into knit and crochet. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Toni. And I look forward to hosting you in the very near future. We will allow you to move to our area, get settled. Then as soon as you finish that next book, we'll be ready for you.
Sounds good. I'll be ready, Miss Tracy. Thank you so much for hosting. And thank you, Miss Christine, for setting this all up. I really appreciate it.
And I would like to say, please check out DetroitPublicLibrary.org for other events. We are constantly hosting different virtual events. And in the very near future, we'll be inviting you back into our library spaces. Thank you, Ms. Christine.
Our next event is this Saturday, in fact. Another Detroit native, Scotty Scott, will be here virtually to discuss his cookbook, Fix Me a Plate. Ooh. And that will be on Saturday at 2:00. And you can find him on our website. And Toni, don't worry. you might not have to write another book. We'll probably just have you come this fall anyway, so people can actually buy some more books and see you in action.
I would love to do that.
Actually, I'm working on a master plan.
Okay. Well, you got my email. Reach out. I'm going to be kind of traipsing back and forth between now and the fall, so I would love to set something up. Truly, yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone, and have a good night. And Toni, don't worry, you'll be hearing from us.
Sounds good. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.